5,000 years ago, somewhere between the Tigris and the Euphrates, a bureaucrat with a reed stylus leaned over a slab of wet clay and wrote what might be the most important sentence in economic history: 3 measures of barley owed after harvest. That's it. No golden idol, no dragon horde, just a guy, some mud, and a promise. And that promise changed everything. Civilization did not start with money. It started with a problem. Farming requires seed before harvest. Trade requires goods before payment. Armies require food before victory. Humans kept running into the same inconvenient truth: you have to spend before you earn. Wheat refuses to grow on command. Ships decline to assemble themselves overnight. Soldiers get cranky when you tell them their paycheck will arrive eventually. Production and payment do not happen at the same moment. There is always a gap. That gap is where debt lives. Debt isn't some modern invention cooked up by Wall Street. It's the natural consequence of time. If output arrives later, someone must advance resources now. Seed in spring, repayment in autumn, wages today, rent tomorrow, supplies now, taxes later. Civilization runs on this mismatch. In early Mesopotamia, temples and palaces turned into giant accounting machines. They tracked obligations in barley and silver by weight. Silver wasn't necessarily jingling around in everyone's pocket. It was often just a unit on a tablet, a way of measuring who owed what. Farmers borrowed seed, merchants borrowed capital for caravans. Everything revolved around structured expectations about future production. Writing didn't explode because poets suddenly felt inspired. It expanded because someone needed to remember who owed 3 measures of barley. Memory is unreliable. Clay is patient. Bureaucracy was born not out of love for paperwork, but because someone had to keep score. And once you can keep score, you can scale. Cities grow when promises can be recorded and enforced beyond personal relationships. You no longer need to trust only your cousin. You can transact with a stranger because the temple has a ledger, and more importantly, authority. Congratulations, you've just invented organized complexity. Of course, this only works if the math makes sense. If too many people owe too much barley and the harvest fails, things get tense. Ancient rulers figured this out quickly. Every so often, they declared clean slates, canceling certain debts to prevent social meltdown. Not because debt was evil, because too many claims on too little production is a fantastic way to start a riot. Coins came later. Lydia and the Greek city-states started stamping metal to standardize payments. It was efficient. Soldiers could be paid without hauling scales everywhere. Traders could settle accounts faster. Coins improved the plumbing. But coins did not change the underlying engine. Money feels tangible. Gold is heavy, silver shines. Paper has seals and signatures. Digital balances glow reassuringly on screens. But money only matters because it represents something else. If you lock yourself in a vault full of gold and refuse to farm, build, mine, invent, or trade, you will discover something unpleasant. Gold does not feed you. It does not power your home. It does not construct your bridges. It just sits there, dense and decorative. Wealth comes from production, crops harvested, steel forged, energy generated, services delivered. Money is a claim on that production. It is a ticket that says, I am entitled to some of the output of this society. And here's the uncomfortable twist. That makes money behave a lot like debt. A dollar bill works because people accept it as a claim on goods and services. A digital balance works because the issuing state and the underlying economy are expected to keep producing. Even gold works because others believe it can be exchanged for real output. Strip away production and collective belief, and money, metal, paper, or pixels, loses its power. Money circulates as a socially accepted IOU against productive capacity. It is widely tradable debt with better branding. When economies expand, this system hums. Production validates the claims. Currency holds value. Credit flows. When production falters, things wobble. Inflation, deflation, defaults. These are not mystical events. They are signs that expectations about output have diverged from reality. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe and leave comments. Back to the episode. Metal doesn't save you. Productivity does. As society scaled up, so did the timing problem. Villages became cities. Cities became kingdoms. Kingdoms became empires. You cannot build roads across continents or field professional armies with spare change found under the couch cushions. States face the same question as farmers. How do you mobilize resources now against revenue that will arrive later? Borrowing was the answer. Governments issued promises backed by future tax revenue. Instead of waiting decades to accumulate treasure, they raised funds immediately and repaid over time. Investors bought those promises because they believed the economy would continue producing and the tax system would continue collecting. A state that could borrow cheaply gained a decisive advantage. It could raise armies faster, build fleets sooner, and outlast rivals. The contest wasn't about who had the most shiny metal stacked in a basement. It was about who could credibly promise future production. Earlier rulers often relied on direct tribute, grain seized, labor conscripted. Later states refined the model. They issued bonds, formal claims on future taxes, purchased voluntarily. Economic credibility became strategic leverage. Productive capacity became national security. Investors did not lend out of patriotism alone. They lent because they expected farms to yield crops, workshops to produce goods, and bureaucracies to function. A nation's borrowing costs reflected confidence in its economic engine. Military strength increasingly rested on economic expectations. Look at any massive historical project. Cathedrals rising over generations, railways stretching across continents, industrial revolutions reshaping entire economies. None of these waited politely until all the cash was piled up in advance. They moved forward on the assumption that future output would justify present spending. Debt solves the timing mismatch between input and output. It allows societies to build beyond their immediate surplus. It also enforces discipline. If projected production fails to materialize, the claims cannot be sustained forever. Reality eventually demands an accounting. Money, in all its forms, is the lubricant. It measures value and moves claims efficiently. But it does not create wealth. Gold does not plant wheat. Paper does not refine oil. Digital entries do not assemble turbines. They are claims, structured expectations about what will be produced. Wealth rests on productive capacity, land that yields crops, workers who apply skill, machines that multiply effort, knowledge that improves efficiency. Money circulates as a claim on that capacity. Debt extends those claims forward in time, allowing present action against future output. That clay tablet recording barley owed after harvest was not primitive bookkeeping. It was the recognition that tomorrow's production could be pledged today. Long before coins dominated marketplaces, societies had already learned to formalize obligation. Gold did not build cities. Silver did not dig canals. Coins did not plant crops. What built civilization was the ability to mobilize resources before output existed, and the collective belief that output would eventually arrive. Humanity did not rise because it discovered shiny metal. It rose because it figured out how to borrow from the future, and most of the time, how to pay it back.